Okay, section 3.4. We are still in chapter 3, which is the U.S. private and public sector. Now we're going to talk about how the government provides safety nets, basically for the households, for those of us that may be in poverty, programs to help the poor, programs to help retired people. The government tries to provide safety nets and it helps our economy, basically. So first of all, determine why household incomes differ and identify the main source of poverty in the United States. And that's all going to be statistically speaking. We can agree or disagree with the data, but the data is just drawn from numbers. So I hope that there's no emotion that you bring into the lesson if you disagree with the data that the books provided. Learning objective 2, describe government programs that provide a safety net for poor people. So first of all, how do we define a poor person? We have income and poverty. In a market economy, income depends primarily on earnings, on what you make, on if you're working, what your paychecks bring in. That depends on the value of each person's contribution to production. So if a person has something of value that it can put into production, put into the economy, generally they will get paid for it and their income level will increase. So why household incomes differ? First of all, the median income of all households in the economy is the middle income when incomes are ranked from lowest to highest. In any given year, half the households are above the median income and half are below it. So that's how they do the median income. They just list all the people, lowest to highest, and go straight to the middle. Okay, half are above, half are below. The main reason household incomes differ is that the number of household members who are working differs. For example, the median income for households with 2 earners is nearly double that for households with only 1 earner, and about 4 times that for households with no earners. That would be a duh statistic. Like, we all get that. If you've got 2 earners, generally your income is going to be double that of 1 earner. Household incomes also differ for all the reasons that labor earnings differ, including differences in education, ability, job experience, and so on. On average, people with more education earn more at every age. For example, those with a professional degree earn about 4 times more than those that only have a high school degree. Age itself has an important effect on income. As we all mature, we typically acquire valuable job experience, get promoted, and earn more. And that's important. If I think to my job experiences, my first job in high school, I was 15. I worked at a ranch, steak and seafood, which is very similar to a Golden Corral. And I kept the salad bar full. Like, that was my job, kept the salad bar full. I was young. I had no job experience. I had no skills to help out at the restaurant. But, I kept restaurant jobs all through high school and college. And the older I got, I could do more things. The more skills I got, I could do more things at the restaurant, and I earned more money. The older I got and the more job experience I earned. Let's see. High-income households, they're typically well-educated people with both spouses employed. Low-income households typically are headed by single mothers who are young, poorly educated, and not in the labor force. Young single motherhood is a recipe for poverty. Often the young mother drops out of school, which reduces her future earnings possibilities when and if she seeks work outside the home. Even a strong economy is very little aid to households with nobody in the labor force. The government does publish an official poverty rate. Because poverty is such a relative concept, how can it be measured objectively over time? The federal government determines the official poverty level and adjusts this benchmark over time to account for inflation. For example, in 2011, Family of 4, the poverty rate was $22,350. That is not a lot of money, but poverty is also a relative term. The U.S. official poverty level of income is many, many, many times greater than the average income for most of the world's population. Okay, so our poverty level, people that live at poverty or below, are still making a ton more money than the average income for most of the rest of the world. Granted, our cost of living is different than the rest of the world, but still, just to keep that in mind. For example, the poverty level for a family of 4 in the United States in 2009 was $15.31 per person per day. The poverty level used in many developing countries around the world is $1 or $2 per person per day. If we go to this graph, we can look at the number of people in poverty. On this red line, it's millions. And then we can look at the poverty rate and how that has changed. And it's a percentage. All of these lines here are periods of recession. And if you notice, every time we hit a recession, the number in poverty goes up. The poverty rate also goes up. Okay, stayed sort of stagnant there, but it goes up. Continues to go up before it goes back down. Okay, goes up, continues to go up before it goes back down. And really, it hasn't been to this low, which was 1970, in many years. So yeah, during a recession, poverty increases because jobs are decreasing during recession. Unemployment rates increase during recession. Poverty and marital status, and this is where things can be controversial. We all know people in our lives who may be single with children and they are not in poverty. They can be successful. So statistically speaking, this is true, but in reality, we can come up with examples where it's not true. One way to measure poverty is based on the marital status of the household head. So the household head, we've got 3 trends that are clear. First, poverty rates among female-headed families are 5 to 6 times greater. I think we're actually going here. Yep. Poverty rates among female-headed families are 5 to 6 times greater than rates among married couples. So a female-headed family would be a family headed by a female with no husband present. So that would be a mom with a few children. Okay. Another trend, poverty rates among female-headed families are 2 to 3 times greater than those for male-headed families. So a male-headed family would be considered a family headed by a male with no wife present. Okay, so keep that in mind. So first we talked about female-headed families, 5 to 6 times greater poverty rate than married couples. Male-headed families, 2 to 3 times greater than those, female-headed families are 2 to 3 times greater than those from male-headed families. And then the third trend is poverty rates trend down for all types of families, beginning in the 90s, but then rise again in 2000. And then they've increased during the recession of 2008-2009. We have a chart here we're going to look at. So here is female-headed families. The poverty rate above 30% for almost the entire period of time. Male-headed families, remember that's a male with no female present. Your percent in poverty is above 10%. And then the most stable is the married couple families. We're below 10% poverty rate all the way down. Another interesting statistic for poverty and marital status. The percent of births to unmarried mothers is 5 times greater today than in 1960. Many of these births are to teenage mothers. The United States has the highest teenage pregnancy rate in the developed world, twice the rate of Great Britain and more than 12 times that of Japan. That's a crazy statistic. Because fathers in such cases typically assume little responsibility for child support, children born outside marriage are much more likely to be poor than other children are. Births to single mothers make up the primary source of poverty in the United States. Okay, let's talk about programs the government has developed to, or the government develops to help the poor. I mean, it would be a great discussion how society should respond to poverty. So families with a full-time worker are 9 times more likely to escape poverty than families with no workers. Government's first line of defense is to promote job opportunities. Okay, first we have social insurance programs. Social insurance programs are designed to help people who lose income due to retirement, temporary unemployment, say you're laid off, or inability to work resulting from a work-related injury. So the U.S. government funds these programs. The major social insurance program is Social Security. It was established during the Great Depression of the 1930s. Social Security provides retirement income for those who have a work history and a record of making payments to the program. So that's really important to call out. To get Social Security when you're retired, you have to have paid into the program. You need a work history or you don't get to collect it. The other social insurance program is Medicare. It provides health insurance for short-term medical care, and then it also provides insurance to retired, those ages 65 and older, and that's regardless of income. My parents get Medicare. They're both retired. They're both over 65. They receive their Social Security benefits and Medicare. Granted, they've also saved for retirement, so that's not all they're living off of. But the social insurance system tends to redistribute income from rich to poor and from young to old. Hold on a second. Nope. I want to make sure I didn't miss something. Most current Social Security beneficiaries will receive far more benefits than they paid into the program, especially those with brief work history or a record of low wages. Okay, right here. Other social insurance programs include unemployment insurance and workers' compensation. So that's these last two. And those support workers injured on the job. Both programs require that beneficiaries have a prior record of employment. So basically all social insurance programs, all of these, you need to pay into the system to be able to reap the benefits. If you don't work, you don't get benefits. And then we have income assistance programs. Those you don't need a work history to benefit from. Income assistance programs are typically called welfare programs. They provide money and in-kind assistance to poor people. Programs that give money directly to recipients are called cash transfer programs, and non-cash form of assistance, such as housing and health care, are provided through in-kind transfer programs. These do not require work history or a record of contribution. So first of all, cash transfer programs. TANF, which is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. It provides cash to poor families with dependent children. It's also a supplemental security income, and it provides cash to the elderly, poor, disabled, and addicted. So cash transfer programs, we have two possibilities. The TANF provides cash to poor families with children, and the SSI provides cash to the elderly, poor, disabled, and addicted. And then we have the in-kind transfer programs. In-kind provides goods and services. So food vouchers, which some people know as WIC, some people know as food stamps, but they're food vouchers. It's usually for women with children, either pregnant women or nursing women, to provide nutrition for them and their children. In-kind transfer programs are health care, housing assistance, free lunches or free breakfasts at school. And Medicaid is the in-kind transfer program for health care, not Medicare. Medicare cares for old people. Medicaid aids those who can't pay for themselves. So Medicaid funds medical care for those with incomes below a certain level, and it is the largest welfare program in the U.S., Medicaid. So just a reminder, there's two medical safety nets. One of them is Medicare, and it's for retired or those of you that have paid into the system. So Medicare, I always think cares for the old. And my parents get Medicare. They're not old, so I'm not making fun of old people. I'm just trying to remember what the difference is. And then Medicaid aids those that can't pay for themselves. Earned income tax credit supplements wages of the working poor. If a family makes below a certain annual wage, they do not have to pay taxes and could potentially receive a cash transfer from the government. The idea is to provide incentives to work, and the little story in the book is interesting. For example, a family with 3 children that earned $21,000 in 2010 paid no federal income tax and received a cash transfer of about $5,700. The idea is to increase income and to provide incentives for people to work. More than 20 million working families received such transfers in 2010, requiring federal outlays exceeding $40 billion. Many states also have their own programs on top of that. Welfare reform, we sort of have to bring up. The biggest reform of the welfare system in the past 60 years was in 1996, and that legislation created the current system. The TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, that's what they call it now. So the earlier program established eligibility rules that guaranteed federal government would pay most of the cost. Families could stay on welfare for a decade or more. Under the new system, states get a fixed amount of aid from the federal government and can run their own welfare programs. The system requires welfare recipients to look for jobs and limits cash transfers to 5 years. About half the states impose time limits shorter than 5 years. Some observers fear that states now have an incentive to keep welfare costs down by cutting benefits. Sorry about that. To avoid become destinations for poor people, that is, to avoid becoming welfare magnets, states may be tempted to offer relatively low levels of benefits. It's just really interesting. And that is the end of chapter 3.